you get down with the music, behind the music, you will be inspired to think higher in life. Your gears, join the music and Michelle, Gina, turn this up and through your speakers. It's the music.
It is the muses behind the music, and you are listening to the voice of your host, Michelle Fowlin. Y'all, you already know how excited I am about this show, where I have my brother, Dr. Mykee Fowlin. Yo, Mike, is that what you go by? Mykee?
Mykee.
Oh. Okay. So glad to know that the spelling always threw me off. I meant to ask you that years ago when I saw that. Anyway, y'all who are with us, like, share, follow, subscribe. You know, I am appreciative and love the support you all have shown to me and to the podcast of Behind the Music. We are definitely ending our first season, coming soon at the end of June. I can't believe it. Season 1 is almost done, and it has been a phenomenal year. So I really do want to jump right into this, because I've got my brother who is not only a psychologist by degree, by trade, by life. I mean, really and truly, all of my life that I can remember, he has always been trying to help this sister put this stuff, I just pointed to my head, together. And he's also an actor. We started out acting together, just like we did music, right? So, you know, I always talk about dad and mom and dad and mom's influences. And I want to jump into this music thing real quick, because, you know, you used to play instruments, and then I want you to tell us why you stopped, because according to mom and dad, it was based off of the fact that, you know, they said you felt that I was, you know, outrunning you in the music.
Well, it's okay. So it's a little more complex than that. So I played the piano. That was my first instrument, like all of us. And then I played the clarinet. And then I went to the saxophone. And I went to I think it was either the tenor sax or alto. I think the tenor sax I went to. And then, but for me, the piano part, I stopped because I felt like it was one of those unconscious things in our family where we didn't talk about it, but we all carved out wherever our niche was, you know, and not so much including Joy. Joy grew up in a separate home. The little sister, you know, grew up in a separate home than the rest of us, you know, being, from me, 11 and a half years younger than me. So she grew up in such a separate existence. So really the three of us who were growing up in the house there, you know, where Roy was the athlete in baseball, very talented in that. And in academics, he was natural in that he didn't have to put much effort in to do well. You were at a very early age a singer and a pianist. And I was the performance artist.
The in-between.
Right. And also the performance artist part, where that's what I excelled in. And it was just a way that I just didn't, like, for me, I didn't want to have a comparison or competing with you musically. I mean, you were a phenom. So it wasn't even the same way you did with music is the same way being on stage made sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny because, you know, we all were in these different, drama groups. Dad used to do some of the dramas, and we were a part of that. I think that was the formative introduction to things. And then being involved in church drama clubs, or whatever they would call them. But these things would take us out state, all over the country, to go and perform. And then in high school, I pulled up this picture of when I was doing, do you remember that movie thing that we did at high school, and I was Kip the Palace Gremlin?
No. Yo, I remember other things in your life, but nothing that insignificant. I remember you getting stuck with someone's thumbtack on your butt. What are we talking about, Kip the Palace?
I swear you don't remember.
Wow.
Oh, yeah,
No.
okay, whatever. I was Kip the Palace Gremlin, and they did this movie, and it really, listen, it was fun. I saw a picture of it. I meant to like pull out the picture and just take a picture of it and send it to you. Like, yo, do you remember this? But that was a highlight for me. But that was also my clue, like Michelle acting. You just
That's that. How old were you when that whole thing happened? I don't remember
honestly
that.
don't even remember how old I was, but it might have been like freshman year of I don't even remember.
Okay.
I mean, it was just funny to like see that, and I remember the song, this album. I don't know why I remember this song. The song was stupid, but it was. God forbid, the guy who wrote this thing, I don't even remember his name, you know, that he might be watching today. It was a great song, sir. But it was just different. Anyway, I was going through some stuff. And do you remember a time when you used to write us as gifts? You would write us letters, the whole family, individually. You would set out and write us a letter. In 97, I keep every single letter that, you know, anybody ever sends me, even if it's not so great. I still keep it because it's a part of my journey and it's a part of the growth I've experienced from it. And I love this letter so much, dude. I loved it so much. By the way, I think you've kind of gotten a little bit lazy in that. Like, you haven't really given us any letters lately.
I'm telling you, you're right. I definitely have not written. It takes a lot of energy. You know, you didn't realize how much energy. It takes a lot of energy because it's never just a letter that I'm writing, you know, Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday, but it always, you know, my letters always go deeper and, you know, and talking about things that I'm observing in the world. Yeah.
Totally. And I get that focus because if I'm just sitting down, like I was sitting down trying to write Elijah a letter, and I must have erased so many things because it does take the thought. Like it's very intimate. It's very involved. And so you can't just rush something like that. By the way, Katie Muller, you remember Kip the Palace Gremlin. She made a quote on it. His master.
I guess it was for real. It wasn't one of your other little imagination fantasy world things.
Mike, we talked about this. Mike, we talked about the things that you can't really say. Anyway, you send me this letter and you write this letter about photography. You were really into photography. At one point, you had a dark room and you were talking about the process of developing the pictures. And at the end of it, you wrote, I suppose I say all of this to say what I appreciate most about you. You've been exposed to light, but are in continual development. And like that forever has resonated with me because I know that I have done a lot of changing. I've done a lot of growing and I still have a lot more to go. But for you to see it, because you've always been my muse. You've always been my hero, my best friend, my confidant, the person who gets on my nerves, but sometimes you may not even know because I just forgive you because I love you so very much. But this last part here, you said, you're beautiful like the movement of clouds, changing days into night, into storms, into warmth. Let this beauty be God's mirror. And so I always say, I want people, when they experience me, to make sure that they are experiencing God. Love, healing, power. I don't want you to come in contact with me and not do that. What do you, when you are coming in with, meeting people, because you really primarily focus this gifting that you have in acting with young people, what do you want them to walk away?
Yo, okay, for real, right? So, and for those you don't know, we barely just went over a little bit about what we're going to do today. I didn't want to give answers and to process this. And so with you just saying that, I've got to tell you what, recently I've been talking about, especially towards the end, whether kids or adults. So last year during the pandemic, landscapers come out to the house. The guy, Bob, who owns the company, he's just like, hey, what do you want to do with this, the flower bed right outside the house? And I'm like, not much. Me with, even like growing up, the lawn, I was like, why don't you put some rocks down there, so I didn't have to mow the lawn. And so I was saying to the guy, he's like, we could lay down some river rocks. And I was like, okay, what do I have to do? And he's like, nothing. They look pretty against the stone of your house. Yo, sis, I was like, yo, yes, nothing, lazy, perfect. Let's do it. He throws down these river rocks. And then I come back home before they finish the job. Joanne, girlfriend was at the house, and she says to me, you missed them. They wanted to wait around, but they had to go. And they said, don't forget, you have to water the rocks every other day. And I was like, hold on. That's not the deal. Bob said I had to do nothing. And I was like, why would I have to water river rocks?
Right.
And then, she was like, they are river rocks. And I don't know if you ever broke down words sometimes. You don't realize the obvious nature of it. But river rocks, she's like, they need water. And I was like, okay. So I started watering these rocks every other day. 2 weeks into it, car driving by. People in the car start laughing at me watering my rocks. I feel like a clown. I finished watering the rocks. I go back inside. I pick up the phone. I call Joanne. I'm just like, yo, baby, I feel so stupid right now. I was outside watering the rocks, and, these people were laughing at me. And she was like, she starts laughing. And, Joanne, for those you don't know, she has an English accent, from Manchester. And so she's like, why are you watering the river rocks? And I was like, that's what you told me. They told you to tell me. And she was just like, I was only joking. For real. So she says this, right? But check this out. This is the part where you were just talking about what you do and what I said to you in that thing. I still go back out and I water the rocks because the coolest thing happens. River rocks, when they're dry, they absolutely do not look pretty against the stones of my house. But when you water rocks, they're like all these colors inside the rocks that you can't see until the water hits them, right?
Wow.
And they start shining, they start sparkling, and it's absolutely beautiful. And so I started looking at that. That's my metaphor. That when I have a conversation with a student in a school or an adult, or I'm sitting at a bar, or I'm hanging out with family like we did, just hanging out. I want that moment to be a part where somebody is able to reflect because of something I'm saying to make their better self shine.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I feel is that mission and that purpose that I want really to be not only in some ways the person that's providing the water, but I know it's not coming from me, that those colors are already inside that person.
Oh, that gave me goosebumps. Oh, that was good. Like that's a sermon right there. That's church, right? Yeah. That's so powerful and so beautiful. And I believe somebody needs to hear that. You have been so incredibly impactful into people's lives through this artistry, this gift of acting. I want you to take us back a little bit to why you decided to go into psychology versus just head on into drama, like just full-fledged that.
Well, that wasn't even the two choices, really. So before my junior year of high school, it was that I was going to be an astronaut, right? That was, I don't know if you remember that. So I was heading to be an astronaut. And I don't know if you remember why. So I was eight years old. We were living in Waltham. And I remember one night, Dad is like there. And for whatever reason, the garbage was picked up towards the evening time at that period. And Dad had said to me at the table, the dining room table, he said, son, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? And I heard the garbage truck, and I was like, is he talking about that? And I was just like, I want to be, I kid you not. I was like, I want to be a garbage man, Dad. Yo, you can imagine Dad's reaction, right? Dad was like, oh, wrong answer, son. Wrong answer. I was like, okay, an astronaut. Garbage man, astronaut. Those are the two choices. Right. 8 years old. That's what I said. I'm going to be an astronaut. Dad held me to that decision. And we know Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Dad does not let go of the story. So that part he held on to me that that's what my son is going to be. He's going to be an astronaut. You know, I took German in high school and middle school and high school.
I remember.
Based on the fact that Dad said, that's what astronauts know. They know German.
We don't know where he got his information from.
Who knows where Dad gets any of his information, right? But so that until my sophomore year, and then my junior year of high school, I took a psychology class with Mrs. Tulp.
Best teachers, man.
Awesome woman. Awesome. Yes. One of my heart songs, one of my definite influencers in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I take this psychology class. Two things happen in that class. One is that we watched a movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the mistreatment of those who had a mental illness by the rest of society and the world and hospitals and the medical field, I remember crying in that class and just feeling like, this is not right. I have to do something. I want to help people who have been stigmatized with this label of being mentally ill. And then how people were rejected. And that was the one part. Then the second part that happened was then I started reading more. And I was in the library at the high school, and I pulled out a psychology book. And then this was what turned me that I'm going to be a psychologist. They said there was a study that was done where the subjects drank 8 gallons of water in 24 hours. Now, not only do you pee the whole time,
right,
but it alters the pH levels in your brain and you become intoxicated.
Yeah.
Right? You're drunk, right? And so here I am, my junior year, 17 years old. I'm like, I could get drunk from water?
Michael, like,
kid you not?
No, I know you're not kidding. But other people are probably like, what the?
So I knew then I'm going to be a psychologist. If I can find out fun facts like that, like, all right.
So now, it's what you do with the fun facts that matter. Like, anyway, I didn't know that about the astronaut. Yeah. I didn't remember that,
Mm-hmm.
I do remember Dad always talking about, if you want to be a garbage man, you be the best garbage man that's out there. And maybe that's because the garbage truck was going by during your story that had happened. Mm-hmm. That stuck with him or something. But this infusion then, so you go to Rutgers. No, you go to Evangel first.
Right.
Why Evangel?
Yeah, so Evangel is a school out in Springfield, Missouri, small Christian liberal arts school. And we were so involved in the Assembly of God, that sect of the religion, that when I was looking for colleges, I think I wanted to, at that time in my life, I wanted to be in a Christian school, a very strong Christian school, not just by name only, but really this passionate, faith-based place.
Mm-hmm.
When I applied to Evangel, they ended up sending me a scholarship before they send me an acceptance letter. And, growing up, I was just like, okay, that's a sign from God, that right. This must be where I have to be. And like I look back now, I'm very thankful for that experience, the people that I met, the education I have, the friends that I have, I wouldn't have Saskia if I hadn't gone, had I not gone there, all these things right. that connected to it. And so I'm grateful for that experience, going that undergrad to there.
Mm-hmm. And then you go to Rutgers, and yep. Rutgers, was that like the space that you were able to really pull on the acting all the more, or did it happen at Evangel?
Started at Evangel. Yeah, I had this amazing teacher, David Smith. He was just, we all have our muses, as you talk about, right? We have these people, though, that really just shake our world so profoundly and make us see whatever artistry we have in a different light. That was David Smith. I remember one class he had us, we were doing King Lear, and we're doing this scene work, and he wanted us in the class to go over just these 2 words. It was Peace Kent. Kent was a character in there, and
Okay.
just like saying peace, Kent, and we're all kind of doing it the same way. We're like peace, Kent, peace, Kent, and he's getting mad. He's just like, think about it. He's just like really getting frustrated. And then all he did at one point was that he's like, sometimes when you're really upset, you don't have to yell. You just clench your teeth and say, peace, Kent. And it just, when he said that, it was just like, wow, there was this whole thing there was something that opened up inside of me that I use when I'm performing, that I will have characters at times where I am laughing, but the mood is not humor.
Yeah.
And then I'm bringing across these parts when I'm performing. But yeah, he was a big influence on me in the acting world. But when I got to grad school in psychology, you had a lot of serious people in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't happy with me really doing performance art. They weren't happy with me going on a Wednesday night to do open mic poetry. They were, the dean of the school was like, you don't seem very serious about the program. The other students here, they want to be psychologists. That's all they ever want to do. That's what they want to be. You seem kind of torn between two worlds. I'm not sure this is the school for you. I remember how crushed, upset, but it also inspired me. You're not going to make me quit.
Right.
I'm my father's son. You're not going to make me quit. Was what I said. I'm gonna finish this. And the irony is that once I became successful with it, who's ringing my phone is the same guy. Can you donate to the school?
Wow. Yeah. No, those things always come.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, I love this. You said I'm my father's son. When I hear that, growing up in the same household, we could have very different perspectives on that statement. What does that say? What does that mean to you? I'm my father's son.
Yeah. So with dad is an interesting being. He really is. I sometimes share this in my presentations that my dad's birth story tells you what you need to know about him. And I don't know if you know dad's birth story. I'm sure you heard his birth story where he talks about he was a twin, and his sister came out before him, but she was stillborn, and the doctors did not know that he was a twin. And before that, doing a post-op with our grandmother, dad's hand comes flying out with his fingers spread apart. And to me, it's a symbol of who dad is.
Wow, no, I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah. Wow. So dad will never be silenced. That you are not going to shut him down, close him in, and wipe your hands and walk away. And so when I say I'm my father's son, the one thing about dad, all his faults and stuff, is that he knows his true north. He knows his thing of you're not going to make dad compromise something that he feels is wrong, internally for him.
Yeah.
And so that part has been something that's stuck with me on that level.
Wow. Yeah. I'm just I can say that about myself too, but I think I take more of the negative edge of that. I'm just being 100, y'all. I think I take more of the negative edge on that because I am fiercely about ain't nobody gonna stop me. There ain't nothing that you can try it, but it ain't gonna happen. It's that you've learned though. I've watched you learn how to approach that differently and approach people. And I almost think it's that foundation of being the psychologist that you think about people's mindset and how to approach them. Yes.
Yeah.
Sir. Yeah. I don't. And I want to. I'm getting better. I'm so far away from being good though. And all I can do is it's going to get there eventually. But
and maybe not, right? Maybe it is, but maybe you I would describe as you're also, you are your father's child too. And, the combination of mom for sure influenced my life big time. But, and what I mean for you though, is that part where you have your rough edges, but you tell your truth. You're not afraid to show those flaws where there's been parts of me, because I always had trouble fitting in and making sense of this world, where at times I don't want to come off to be too weird or strange. So I'll hide some of that. You're bold. You are you, and that comes with the prickles on it too. But you are you, and that is part of Dad, and that's why sometimes you and Dad will butt heads.
night.
But I gotta tell the audience, like, listen, you're the only. I may be the one able to calm Dad down. That's my role. I certainly know how to speak to Dad in a way that no one else can to calm him down. But you're also the one who knows how to put Dad in his place. That you're the only one I know that he will just be like, okay, Michelle, okay, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go now. It's like, well, you're going to go, but I'm already going.
Oh, yeah. I'm working on it, y'all. I'm working on it, though. I'm working on it. So I want to jump back to something, because after we come out of like Rutgers, you didn't practice. You didn't go into the practicing of psychology, but you are doing this. And that's what I love about what you have created. Initially, and I found, dude, the other day I'm cleaning out my office and I find one of your business cards from years ago called "The World Is My Stage." And I've taken that a long time ago, and I have applied that to myself. But you have made this show. Do you still call it just that, or now you have these sub shows out of "The World Is My Stage"? How's that work?
So originally "The World Is My Stage" was going to be a business name. And then, when I started finding out that all of the business things you have to do for a business name, I was like, all right, I'm going to leave that aside. It's me, my name. I don't need to have like all this other attachment to it, But no, so the main show that I take into schools is called "You Don't Know Me Until You Know Me." And that is, character-based type of show, but it's also evolved into a storytelling, understanding the psychology of people, also understanding like how we can use those things that people have used against us or people have said about us, but use them as our strength.
Yeah.
So my weirdness is my strength, is what I tell people, right? The story of my pain, the things that I've been through, the sadness, my depression, my anxiety, those are also the things that I use as my strength.
How much of the characters that are inside your show belong to you? How much?
Yeah, it varies. Sometimes when I come up with a character, I think a lot of it is I'm looking at a situation or a story that I want to bring about, right? So, or an experience that happened in the life, right? So back in high school, there was a guy, I won't name his name, but he was, harassed because he was a bigger guy. And, but one day I walked into the locker room and they had him down on the bench and they were like wrapping him in black electrical tape and taking Bengay and shoving it all in his body everywhere. And I saw him just crying and angry and I walked in, but that scarred me in some ways, not as much as it scarred him, I'm sure, but scarred me seeing that, being evolved to stop them. But years later, I'm creating a character that has a piece of that story in there. So a lot of my characters end up having those pieces of things that impacted me on some level, and I put them and I combine them into stories.
What character, could we see that has a piece of that individual that's there? Well, tell us first some of the characters that you have in your show, "You Don't Know Me Till You Know Me."
Yeah, so the first character that I actually end up doing in my presentations is character named Jermaine. Now, here's the thing. I tell people, I'm trying to see if I have the hat with me, but I tell people I was never like that rambunctious kid who was bouncing around that way, because we grew up in a home with these old school Jamaican parents, immigrant parents who would never allow it. So we had to play the game with people that's like, say, you know, like we're just polite. Remember how we used to answer the phone? You know, like good afternoon. This is the Fowlin residence. To whom am I speaking? You know, and it was just like, oh, what polite, sweet kids. And here I am, 7 years old, robbing stores. Right. So like, so like all this like presentation to look good for people there. And so when I created the character Jermaine, it was like I got in touch with who I felt like inside. You know, it's a 6-year-old boy. And sometimes people ask me, why do you do this 6-year-old boy? You know, like I understand your other characters, but what is it about the 6-year-old? And for me, I think it started at age 6. So let me just I'm going to do a quick little bit of the 6-year-old boy and his way and how 6-year-old children process the world they see. Okay.
So I was in my class and I said, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the puppet for which it stands, one nation, under God. I'm so miserable, with liberty and justice for all. That's what I said to my teacher. And my teacher yelled at me for doing that. But my mommy said to talk, it means that you're alive, and that if you're silent, you might as well be dead. So I just talk all the time and never shut up. I talk all the time because I'm super duper smart. And this kid in my class, he thinks that he said that I look like a chocolate M&M monkey, and I got mad at him, and then he started calling me the N-word, and I don't like to be called a ninja, and so I got mad at him again. I punched him in the face, and I screamed out, Pokemon!
And so now all this comes from the idea, right, that when we were younger, we made a lot of prank calls.
Yes, right? We did.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
And the only way, and I tell people we lived in a time without caller ID or star 69. So we had to be able to be good enough to get away with those prank calls. And so I remember in Bellingham, go downstairs to the phone we had back there. And we would just start like prank calling people. And I was obsessed with it to a sick way. You know, you were playing your piano, being diligent. I'm like, I got to make some more prank calls. Other kids playing out of the street. I was like, I got my prank calls. So like for me, that's where the voices started. You know, I was calling nursing homes and I was getting these little grannies who thought that I was their grandchild. And I was like, no, I got lost. I left home, you know, and just they were like, oh, you know, freaked out. But for me, that's how the voices actually started. And the 6-year-old for me is because we underestimate and we undervalue the brilliance of those little ones.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know? And we know that with our niece, right? We watch we watch our nieces and they're just like the way they process the world. And, you know, I love the fact. So, you know, our sister Joy was sharing that, you know, our niece, Marley, was in the car and she's talking, carrying on a conversation. And her other sister, her big sister, Sophia says to her, says, Marley, are you talking to yourself? And she's like, no, myself is talking to me.
Yeah. Whole
That's
other
deep.
Level. Yeah.
That's deep.
That's right. Whole other level.
We talk about this as adults and we say things like the mind and the brain are two separate things. You don't have to explain that to Marley. She just said, myself is talking to me. And that part right there is like, we don't get the value of being 6 years old. Well, it almost like it turns it on his head where he says, Jermaine says, he called me the N-word. And it makes everyone who's an adult laugh and says the N-word is ninja.
Right.
But words are all ridiculous like that, right? Did it hurt him? It hurt him, right? And that is the key part of it. Like when your feelings get hurt, you can replace the words. It doesn't matter, but you know what it is when someone is saying that you're not okay or you're not like us.
Yeah. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Does that ring true?
No. No, that can't ring true. No, it's really, you learn that it's the opposite of at times. It's the words that have been the ones that were weaponized against me when I was younger, and I couldn't appreciate that being and all the weirdness that I tried so hard when I was younger to be like Roy, my brother, to try to fit in. He naturally could walk into a group and everyone wanted to be near Roy. He was taller, he was handsome, and it was like, oh, I remember adults in the family like, oh, that Roy is so handsome. And then look at me and be like, Mykee is studious. I'll be
with that.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna burn down your park.
Okay, I'm not even gonna talk about the fires. I'm not even gonna talk about
Actually, that's a good point to talk about, though, because in the chaos, and I don't mean to take control of this, but in the chaos that we were growing up in, there were behaviors that all of us were doing because we didn't know how to process those feelings that were so deep. Me setting fires was my way of some level of control that was happening, but some anger that was burning in me. And then lighting for me was a way to allow a release to that some of that stuff that was stuck, and there was I wish that I could understand it when I was younger. It would have saved some of that pain, but a lot of that pain was, the fire was like, it wasn't just about like, wow, I like a pretty fire, which I did, but it was also like the idea that I could control something else being destroyed or hurt.
Wow.
And that's something that took me years to realize. You don't have to burn down a park if you have all this stuff inside that's, burning inside of you, so to speak.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, that's so true. You don't have to burn down a park.
No.
To do it. I mean, hey guys, let me, I'm not really digressing. It's still on the line of it. Like this whole burning thing is so serious. One day I'm on my bike and I see woods on fire. And this is down the street from our house. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I'm looking around and going, and something in me, when I get home, I'm telling my mother, and something in me, I look over at my brother and I'm like, did you set this on fire? The woods? Like, dude, like the fire truck and the people came, but it was just like, it was a different thing. But, the analogy of it, when you said if you had known when you were younger, all of our circumstances, I firmly believe, the blessings and those trials, they are uniquely designed for us so that as we go along in our journey, our testimony can be of a blessing to somebody else. Like, had it not happened, maybe the things that you are, who you are today, would not resonate as deeply and as profoundly as they have and impact so many people because you had to experience those things, and even with all the chaos and craziness that you still might go through today, you have to, in order to be that strength, that healing balm for somebody else that you might never know of.
Absolutely. So I was sitting in college 3 weeks before graduation, and I was doing very well in college, and it was probably a day or two after I'd been selected to be the baccalaureate speaker, and I'm in this college class, and it's on like trauma, and the professor had put a bunch of things on a board just saying, like, if any of your clients or your patients have experienced any of these things or they act out in any of these ways, you have to really pay attention. These are really indicators of trauma. And so we're all like wanting to be psychologists, and we're like all studious, like, oh, okay. And we're looking at the stuff on the board. I go down that list and I'm just like, setting fires, lying and manipulative behaviors. And I'm like, shoplifting. And it's like all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm laughing in class because I think, like, this is like a joke she must be saying. I thought everyone been through all this stuff. And then when it got to like some of the, physical discipline of growing up in the house that we grew up in, which was abusive, right? And on that several levels, so that level of recognizing that, and then recognizing also that as a kid, that from another neighborhood kid that I was molested, that this was something for me at this time, like, wow, she's talking about me, and that, like you said, all the painful stuff. We don't see the whole map at any one time. You can't. We don't. The map, the puzzle. We don't get to see all of that. And so I'm there in the dorm room. I called Charlie Thiel, who was a youth pastor at the time, and I'm just crying to him, and I'm telling him about all this stuff that happened. And I remember he just said to me, he said, "Mike, I love you. God loves you. And you're not going to understand what I'm going to tell you next, but you will heal from your pain. And once you heal from that pain, you will need to talk about that pain again.
Yeah.
Because other people need to heal." Right. And so he says this. And so I just go along with it, not fully understanding. But when I started doing shows, I started understanding a little more. But then there was a seminal moment of doing a presentation in a school. And I've had plenty of moments of students coming up to me. But this one girl, 8th grade girl, is absolutely devastated. And she comes up to me, she grabs me, hugs me, crying, and she steps back and she goes, "Thank you for not ending your life in college, because today you just saved mine." And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, my pain is my gift. Right? That's it, right? So when you sing or when I'm on stage, that's the one thing I want. I want to remember that I am here because of all those things that have tried to defeat me.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Oftentimes, people ask me on the music end of things, how come you never really deal with adults? And I was like, I do. I've conducted adult choirs, and I have adult students, but there has been an anointing that has been placed in me, specializing in young people, as I feel with you. I think they are the ones that keep me youthful in mind. They are my constant inspiration. My own children are my challenges. They are my mirrors. You know this. They constantly have me looking at myself through them, which is a very hard pill to swallow, but it all helps me to grow. These kids that you come in contact with, I was sharing with you the other day how I just don't think that the school systems are doing enough as an educator to address mental health. And now that we have hit a pandemic and we are pushing ourselves outside of it, there all of a sudden now it's like people are starting to be wakened up to the idea that it's not just about the academics. We have to do something to touch on the psychology of these young people, because to me, when your mind is messed, everything else falls along with that. Yeah. Yep. Would you, inside of your show, it's funny because I sent Tessin all the information this year to get you at my school, and then boom, we hit with this pandemic. But that just lets me know that next year will be even more of a better timing. Outside of just your show, what do you do in your personal life, to kind of speak to this cause of mental health issue, as one who has endured your own demons, and you talk about it ever so openly and so real. What do you do to help these other people?
Yeah, so I do a lot of writing, the writing part, it comes and goes, like writing is like my, not blessing and curse, but really we have this love affair. It's like this long-term thing where, but it's the helpful thing for me. So I'll do writing, whether it's in like a journal or writing poems, But I also, in the last 6 or so years, started writing postcards because they're shorter. You can't write very much on them. So I would just write things like, you're beautiful, you're not alone, I'm glad you're staying on this planet. And all of this started out of my own dark space. That several years ago, I was in a super dark space where I just was like, this is not feeling like I really want to be here. But I knew I wasn't going to end my life, but I felt like this despair. And I started writing these letters to myself. And then instead of putting them away, I would go to Barnes and Noble, go to the bestseller section, teenage bestseller section, poetry section, take out books, stick these postcards in, and just in hopes that if I'm feeling this way, there's got to be other people feeling this way. And it would make me laugh just thinking like, because I'd literally, when I could do it, I'd do it like a secret mission. I act like I'm not doing anything, go into these sections, I'm looking around and I'm sticking these postcards in, but it gives me such pleasure thinking that someday somebody's going to be turning a page to a book and come across some postcard from somebody they never met that's going to say, you are not alone, right? And I've been so blessed that I haven't seen it a bunch of times, but 3 times in my life now where I've been performing at a school or some organization and a person has come up to me and said, I found one of your postcards.
Oh, come on, stop.
Yeah. So I do this. So about 4 years ago, I'm in Massachusetts at a private school. I do the presentation. I talk about challenging people. I said, do the postcard, do a postcard. And I told them about it. This girl in the front row, she's freaking out. She's looking at her friends, but she's distracting me. And then I stopped looking at her. At the end, she comes up to me and she's in tears. And she just goes, were you at the Cambridge Barnes and Noble last year? And no kidding, sis, the only time I've ever been there. And I said, I was there. And she's like, I found your postcard on the day that I got out of the hospital for my eating disorder, and I was planning on killing myself, and your postcard told me I was not alone.
Yeah, man, that right there.
And so the part for me, right, like I think about all those things that people have thrown out as my rope.
Yeah.
My thing of saying, you're not alone.
Yeah.
That this dark space right now, this is going to be used for your goodness that you do in the world, right? And so like I see this girl and I'm like, I don't even ask like what are the chances anymore. I just realize that this life is greater than our knowledge of understanding of how things connect,
That's good. Oh yeah, man. Oh man, the creator is awesome. Awesome. All for the creator's good. We grew up in a very religious household, but when I think that when we got older, and I'm speaking about you and I, that there was another level of recognizing spirituality outside of religiosity, and that to me is key, the spirit, and that when you're in tune with that, then you can live as the Christian, the Christ-like, the anointed, in the footsteps of Jesus as we were coming up. And I remember mom and dad, especially mom, was always saying, it doesn't matter what happens with you all. I know that I have prayed enough, and I'm paraphrasing, for you all, and I have taught you the way. And the Bible talks about, a child will come back. You will always come back to it, that the foundation, the rooting that's in us. And I feel it just in, your life, your testimonies. It's like, I know you, but I'm still getting to know you after all these years. And I'm just so overwhelmed and blessed by the impact that you are having on this world.
Yeah. And you're right. That whole thing, right? The difference between the spirituality as well versus the religiosity. We grew up in a very religious home, right? And at times it was more about the religiousness, the religiosity part of going to church, of looking at people on a Sunday mowing their lawn and saying, oh boy, they don't have Jesus. And then when and I had to go through a phase where I became extremely and pushed you away, where, in my junior year or sophomore year of high school, where I had this awakening, but it really turned people off. And I couldn't understand the balance until years later to realize that to be a reflection of the creator, however you want to understand that concept, to understand, though, that you are a small piece in this large life, but you are a really important piece in this large life, right? That part for me, I could let go of the religious part of it now. I don't need to enter a church sanctuary to understand that when I see somebody, that I'm seeing the person who is in pain and needs to heal. Right? And that's what it is for me. I've learned to be able to just understand that most of us are just fearful. We don't think it's fear. We think like all the things we do to protect us from this fear, but we're ultimately just feeling this level of, I want to be loved, accepted, and I don't want to be hurt,
Yeah. I spent a lot of time when I was younger, in my own way, when we talk about our older brother and, all of his trying to figure this thing out called life. We always put him into this thing of, this approval state. And we all had our ways of trying to have mom and dad's approval. And for me, it was a religious approval for them, and
Right.
this thing kind of went into, and it didn't help that we went to a Pentecostal church too, where they believed in speaking in tongues. And, I remember the day that you gave your life to God, just give it to God. And for mom and dad, that meant a different thing. And as you matriculated, it became a different thing. But I remember I was like, oh man, I need to do this too. Because there was another level of attention that mom and dad were giving to you because of your found walk with Christ. That's where all of the speaking in tongues came in for me. And you and I joke about it in our adulthood life, but going to this Pentecostal church, they were real big on speaking in tongues. And, so I just decided, I'm putting myself out there right now, Muses. I'm going to tell y'all a story about me at the time that...
Can't wait, because I'll fill it in if you don't tell it.
We were in church, and I was just like, we had just come back from a convention, a youth convention, which was absolutely dynamic and powerful. And I must have stood up for about 3-4 hours with people trying to push me down and just, say syllables. They would always tell us to just come up and say syllables. So I actually was speaking in tongues, got back home and decided I was going to try it in church. And so I was standing next to you in church in the back row, and the worship music was going, and you were really in your true zone. And I was just like, okay, when the music gets silent, Michelle, I'm talking to myself now. When the music gets silent, Michelle, just start talking in tongues. And Mike, I will never forget the look you I could see you from the corner of my eye. But it was so important to want to have this approval from mom and dad. And I think that's probably one of the things that like must have snapped in me too as I got older, that said, I really don't care about having approval from anybody, because I recognized what that took from me. That worked in a sense. Like all I knew now was, I'm going to be the best Michelle I could be. I don't care what anybody else thinks, and I'm going to do it this way, and they'll either like me or they won't.
Right.
Like, period. And that was inclusive of mom and dad coming up, because it was just because
you felt we both, I think we felt that we couldn't be good enough for them ultimately on that level. There was a way that until I went through that phase where it was kind of scary. I was the person, I tell people, I was the person when I got to that phase in high school. You saw me walking down the hall towards you, you turn around, you walk the other way because I'm about to preach. I'm about to leave, tracks, Bible tracks in the bathroom. And, so that was all a part of me. But it's not that different than me getting on stage now and being passionate and not caring if people are going to try to laugh at me or to make fun of me. That when I feel that, and that's what I meant, like I am my father's son, like I am convicted to be true to me.
Yeah.
And that part, like I've never been good at being a part of a group. I had a friend that, that said to me last year, you seem to want to have a cult following. And I'm like, if you know me, you don't know. I don't want anybody following me around. I'll just lead them into a bunch of circles to make jokes about it. I'm like, I'm not the person that's going to be, follow me, follow the way I do that. It's always been something, though, for me that because I couldn't follow groups, I had to be okay with being my strange self in a world that really was trying to pull me, whether it was as a male, whether it was as a black guy, who are you? We had our whole stuff growing up in Tom's River, being one of few blacks there. And so there's all this stuff that we had to fight.
We were the only black people. Along with Angela and her brother Gresper, that was it. We were it.
There were a few more, but yes. Yeah. There was a guy named Bobby Brown that was there too. And who else? I don't remember who else. There were other people though, right?
Oh, look at the time. Yeah. Seriously.
That's for next time.
Oh man. No, though, Mike, I love you. There's I can always say this because I never know where the conversations are going to go. And I love the organic just feel of just moving through like this. And every time before I do one of these shows, I just ask God that if but for one, may that person be healed, encouraged, and their life changed. And we give it back to you because really and truly, it ain't about either of us and what we do. But I'm so immensely proud of what it is that you're doing and the footprints that you are leaving in this world, the lives that you are changing, the people that you are coming in contact with. And because of the message, because of all that you have will endure, the blessings that you've have and will have that make you you and living into your true, authentic self, people are going to be just completely changed by that. What is next for you? What do you want to do?
A lot of that question, a lot of what is next is more the evolution of wherever I am, right? So I don't necessarily just say, okay, I'm going to move on to this or move on to that. It's more like, where can I go on a deeper level with what I'm doing? So even with the presentations years ago when it started, I would just jump from character to character without ever divulging anything about me until a student said to me, you are so cruel because you come here, you manipulate our emotions, and then you leave. And we don't even know if you understand anything about what these characters are feeling. And I was like, what? You think I'm just making that up? And it really changed me when she said that, because I was like, I have to be more transparent in letting people see like those scars, those things, and I've learned how to do that better now than to just leave an audience. We grew up in the church, so we were used to people, like having ministers make us laugh and then the next second make us just cry and be ripped apart and convicted and all this stuff and healing, but all of it. And I learned that in the world that's not used to that, that's a tough go. So I've learned how to be gentle in that healing, more gentle than I was in the past, and to help people to figure out how can we be more honest about our vulnerabilities?
Being honest about vulnerabilities. I don't like to be vulnerable. Ooh, no, not at all. But that's real right there. And I think the first thing is learning how to be honest to ourselves so that we can be honest with other people. You've made some huge steps into, talking and dealing with some very intimate and personal issues in your own life so that they would transfer and translate into these shows in a more authentic manner. And, kudos in doing that, man. I'm still working. I ain't there yet, but I'm attempting to get there. So listen, we got to wrap up. We definitely need like a part 2 on this second season. I'm going to have to bring you back in. Thank you so much for taking this time. I never would have thunk that I would have been thunk. And I said that just the way that I would be over here interviewing my brother, but it really does. I need another word for proud. But that's what I am. I just feel so completely honored to have you in my life that, the creator ordained it as such that we would share this time and space with one another. I love you so much.
I love you. I love you.
I love you so much. And to all of the listeners, the people who tuned in, Muses, I thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to getting together with you all in the next 2 weeks. Until then, blessed be. Peace.